Welcome to another episode of Mazars COVID Talks. This is a podcast about pandemic resilience aimed at supporting business survival by directing organizations to resources and embedding a culture of preparedness. All information shared on Mazars COVID Talks extends from reputable sources. The views expressed here are meant to serve as suggestive guidance based on the knowledge and expertise of the co-hosts and guests. My name is Tashonda Hagerbrook, and I am a part of the organizational resilience practice here at Mazars USA. And along with me today, I'm joined by one of our co-hosts.
Hey everyone, happy Friday. It's Daniela Miller. I'm also a part of the Mazars Technology Consulting Group, specializing in organizational resilience, like Tashonda. How's everyone doing today?
All right, it's nice to have everybody. It's April 3rd. We're missing one of our co-hosts today, right? We give a well wishes to Alicia, who is working on several projects.
Yes, hard at work.
Yes. One of which is the Paycheck Protection Program tool that Mazars USA just released a webcast on, or two webcasts actually in the past 2 days as of April 1st. So I know a lot of applications are going in, and there's opportunities to get some support through that tool.
Absolutely. Yeah, I did see that webcast, and I recommend it to anyone that's listening to our podcast right now to check out those two webcasts on payroll protection. Really, really good information, and it explains a lot as far as like detail on what you have to do when it comes to like filing. So I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, I thought it was so cool that it. You get a tool that can give you some guidance of knowing when is the best time to apply and that kind of thing, so.
Absolutely. I was going to say, there's so many, there's probably going to be a lot of applications getting filed, obviously, and it's probably so much information that they're probably going to need a lot of help just trying to decipher what this means and what that means.
Yeah.
So many different nuances when it comes to applying for this application and actually qualifying for these benefits.
Yeah, I think, and we won't stay on this too long, but next week, it might be a good idea to bring someone on to discuss what the pain points they've seen just in, this first week of the process. Because I remember, maybe 2 years into Hurricane Sandy, there was all of this disaster funding that was available, right? And in the areas I'm working in, the small businesses were not, it took community level recovery groups coming together to advocate on behalf of the businesses local to them. We saw it even in Red Hook, Brooklyn, where 40% of those small businesses did not come back. They never sustained, and the resources and support was available, but getting through the process was seemingly impossible. So huge opportunity here for people to take advantage and get some support at the beginning, not advocating 2 years into the funding being there. So there's a lesson learned there.
Yes, there you go. Yeah.
Right?
That's a good segue. I was going to ask you that too. Did you find that, during Hurricane Sandy that many businesses were waiting a couple of years before they actually even seen these benefits?
Well, so you had an issue that I don't want to speak this directly because I've been going through the CARES Act. Read through it one time and now trying to go through and really notate and understand things. Mm-hmm. But back with Sandy, because it was a flood, now we know, you and I, what we do with organizational resilience, we know all disasters, there's certain things you got to look out for, and what was it, November, we were sitting and talking with a client who was not in an area where they were worried about a flood or any of these things, but the conversation still was, do you have enough VPN to support everyone working from home? You have to just think about it just in case, because there's a lot of ways you could end up in that situation. From Sandy, it was a situation of people can't go to work, but it was due to a flood. And a lot of the business owners, especially small business owners, had to kind of choose between focusing on applying for individual assistance to rebuild on a personal level or focus on the SBA loan process. initially you did have like different FEMA agents coming through and supporting groups like the organization I worked with to help us be able to help people get through the process. But it was different. And this is another opportunity for us to look back at the initiatives that came out of the funding that was allocated for disaster. How did we spend it? How did people, apply for it? What was that process like? Was it impossible? Do you need additional educational support programs to help see them through that? And right now, I think we really have an opportunity to find all of those pain points.
Exactly.
Get there in this crisis.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I know you had some great thoughts about lessons learned too, that you had shared with me.
Yeah, absolutely. When I, think of pandemics, I, think of 1918, the influenza pandemic that happened. And in 2002 to 2003, there was the SARS outbreak. And, there were a couple of things that were happening that are happening now. So, one of the lessons that I see absolutely right now is that time is of the essence. So taking steps early to prevent the spread of the disease, like social distancing and quarantines, will diminish the spread. So for example, in January 10th to February 29th, the city of Wuhan implemented a social distancing and quarantine measures 6 weeks after sustained local transmission was observed.
Okay.
Whereas in Guangzhou, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and please correct me if I'm pronouncing it wrong, they implemented the same measures within 1 week. And as a result, researchers found that Guangzhou's epidemic size and peaks were shortened than Wuhan in their first wave of the outbreak. So if you take prevention steps early, you can definitely slow down the epidemic, as you can see between Wuhan and Guangzhou.
Okay, and I have a question for you with that, because we're seeing it so different everywhere, right? Quarantine and social distancing in Italy looks totally different from Middle America, here in North Carolina where I am, there in New York City where you are.
Exactly.
I mean, I literally were sitting watching the TV and listening to the representative from the Office of Emergency Management on statewide here saying, well, per the governor's statement, you need to stay at home. It's a stay-at-home order, except for if you need critical medical supplies, you need to go to the grocery store. And my favorite one was if you want to take a walk. So my issue with it, I guess, is just that it's so important that we're very clear when we say what social distancing is and what quarantine looks like for someone. If a person is on quarantine, should you be running to the store for essentials? And I think that because we're hearing different messages depending on where you are, and we have this technology, so we're all exposed to whatever news we want to watch, it can be a bit confusing. So my hope is that we have an opportunity to bring on, someone that is working on the side of this with social distancing and communicating that information. So maybe
absolutely
really talk.
No, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When I think of Wuhan, and they had really strict government rules and a really strict shutdown where all of Wuhan shut down. But over here, each state is sort of making their own rules. And as a result, the epidemic keeps spreading. There needs to be a shift in collective consciousness. The state needs to work together with the government, and there needs to be one decision to stop the spread. Or else we're going to continue to be in lockdown. It went from 2 weeks to a month. And who knows how the summer is going to look. So absolutely, I think it's very confusing, and there's definitely a lack of clear information that's coming out. But I also understand that the CDC, and who I'm sure they're under a lot of stress, and there's so many questions coming at them. But from a society standpoint, we definitely deserve the truth, you know. So
Well, it's deciphering through this. We're learning about this thing as it
yeah.
evolves every day. And so I think we're seeking the truth,
Hmm.
and everyone is, but we may not know exactly what it is. But you made a point, and I think it's kind of a good segue for us about some of the societal impacts, and how we see some of these societal impacts across disaster, and what are some things we maybe have learned from them. So when we think about the people focus, right? I know we always like to jump on that one, but we won't stay on it long since we're going to close with our personal note. But with the people focus, we know people are impacted just as crises are happening. You can
Hmm.
be completely far away from something, but see it on the news and it cause an emotional effect to you or stick with you. This is so close to home. It's in our homes. It's with us everywhere. Um,
Absolutely.
I've said it,
As you're talking right now, I hear the ambulance in the background.
right,
It happens like every couple of minutes.
and that's not just regular New York ambulance sound.
No, no, this is
Yeah,
different.
it's different. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really tough to think about, what is this going to look like for us later, because we're so deep in it. I was
Hmm.
just saying to someone yesterday, when I'm watching the news, I feel like I'm not seeing the weather in weeks. All I hear is we have a low of COVID-19 and a high of coronavirus. Like,
So true.
yeah. So I feel like there's no opportunities for us to take a break from it. And when it finally does lift, the fog and the impact on people, and because I used Sandy, I as an example, I will again, we saw mental health impacts not only to people who were impacted and trying to get better and get back to whatever okay looks like,
Hmm.
but also the people who worked very closely to it.
Yes.
Were not okay. Yeah. And there were needs for caregiver retreats and things like that. But if you're not taking a break from this, which is kind of impossible to do during a global pandemic, we really have to consider how people will be impacted being cooped up in their homes, not being able to have some of the contact that we're used to.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, yeah. And then there's positives that come out of it too, because a lot of people are talking more. I'm hearing people sitting down for dinner together, without their phones, which that's beautiful. And I think that's something that we can see as a benefit coming out of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Even as I, talk to you now, the audience can't see it, but, we're talking through Zoom and, we get to see each other. And I know they're having like happy hours now where they're scheduling like video conference calls. So, people can talk and families are communicating this way now. So
Yeah.
there's definitely a significant social impact, but, to your point, I
Mhm.
think it's always good to look towards the positive.
Yeah. Now this one, there's one that, a bullet point you mentioned to me
Hmm.
about economic sectors worldwide. And I'm thinking, I was speaking to one of my mentors in emergency management about this idea. And to her point, this measures in many ways like 9/11. If you think about it, pre 9/11, you know, there was no Department of Homeland Security focused, big behemoth agency
Yeah.
like that. The focus on emergency management was very minimal.
Hmm.
And in that, the effort to pull together government and the private sector and create these public-private partnerships to be prepared for things like this none of that existed. And 9/11 happened and impacted the entire world. And from that, everything changed. Our focus on prevention, terrorism, etc.
Hmm.
Even how companies function, disaster recovery becoming a focus for
Exactly.
organizations, and worth you spending money to ensure that your technology systems, etc., can be either in a cloud somewhere or is so supported I could withstand it again at the drop of a dime if I needed to.
Absolutely.
It changed the face of everything. And I really see this moving in that direction, and we have an opportunity to get ahead of it. and decide what it looks like and stop being reactive. But that's
Absolutely.
it's going to be tough. And as economic sectors continue to be impacted, I think the biggest thing is it's just like when one of the movie catastrophe happens and people actually survive. For organizations to survive, you have to shift, you have to adjust, you have to adapt, you have to transform. And we're seeing some do it by saying, okay, I'm going to help the crisis in this way.
Exactly.
And there's contract funding out there available for me to do so with all of this stimulus stuff.
All this stimulus stuff going around, right? Yeah, I think about the private industries that are getting involved now, like Neiman Marcus and Christian Siriano. They're making PPE gear. And you think about the biotech companies that are developing treatments and vaccines. And I think there's like 19 companies working on the coronavirus treatments for vaccines. And, so also Ford and General Motors and Tesla working with, other ventilator companies. So hopefully we start to see some more ventilators going out there. I mean, we need as many as possible. There's still a shortage, but it's great to see, private companies really taking ownership and, embedding themselves in the community and thinking about the greater good. And, if they're not already, I think they should be considered critical infrastructure. Supposedly we have like 18 out there, well, they should be like number 19 if they're not already. Because, we've even seen like during Hurricane Maria, companies like UPS, really step up their game. And when it came to transportation and getting goods and services to people that were impacted in Puerto Rico or in Texas. So yeah, private companies are just as important. And it goes back to, when we, especially in our field, when we think about everyone having some sort of responsibility and starting locally, and then it building to state, and then it building to government, and private organizations are included in that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I definitely see it going more towards embedding the private organizations and making that an infrastructure that's actually needed and contacted from the very beginning. And then it's looking like, clothing lines may have a second job.
Because that's that opportunity to transform your
Exactly.
and how you deliver products and services.
Absolutely.
And yeah, adapt.
And it also makes me think too, with what's happening and the economical impacts and certain businesses maybe suffering from what's happening. There's that opportunity for their business to transform into a service that actually helps the world. So, when you think of like Ford and General Motors and Tesla, they make cars, right? And, right now, people are not really thinking about getting a car, right? We're thinking about, okay, I want my mom and my dad to be safe. Who in my family is vulnerable? Am I vulnerable? I don't want to know if this happens. Yes.
How do I get my CARES Act benefits?
Exactly.
That's what people are talking about. Yeah.
Yes. So to see private companies actually not only think of the bottom line, which is how am I going to make money? You're starting to see them really think about how are we going to uplift society and save society. I think it's a beautiful thing, and we're definitely headed in the right direction.
Yeah. Well, this is the part of that paradigm shift.
Yes.
Where you had the option to focus just on making money. Now, if you want to be able to stay afloat and make money, you need to be essential.
Exactly. Look at that.
It's something to think about. I think, we've touched on a lot of things today. I think it's important to make sure we hit our note on personal preparedness, but just kind of summarizing some of these things we've talked about, right? We know social distancing is still key. I'm sorry, you hear it everywhere, and you're going to hear us say it because it's that important. And the last time I was in Sam's Club, the hostess on the way out taking my receipt told me this is not that serious. And she's in the age group of the people that we're seeing not living through this, and
Exactly.
it's very serious. So social distancing, we can't say it enough, right? We need to take care of ourselves. Employers want to focus on taking care of your people. It will make a difference as to whether or not they can come back into the office or maintain in a virtual workspace where they weren't before, right? And then the public-private partnerships, and for these private sector organizations looking for opportunities to adjust and adapt and be a part of the crisis response, because that's going to be a big way of how we sustain, right?
Absolutely.
And then Daniela, what's your note on personal preparedness today? What do we have?
Thank you, Tashonda. When we think about the economy, obviously, from a personal aspect, we think about our monetary savings and monies or whatnot. So from a personal preparedness standpoint, I think as events unfold, taking steps to look at your current expenses and seeing where you're able to cut costs and possibly save money, I think will definitely help. And then also establishing some type of an emergency fund, for situations like this. Obviously we're in the middle of the pandemic right now, but, there's going to be other emergencies, especially, moving through the months or going forward. There's hurricane season, there's wildfire season. So I just encourage people to start now and start preparing by creating a little bit of an emergency fund and really looking at the things that you actually need. And it goes back to those essentials, right? What is it that I actually need as opposed to what is it that I want? So and then last but not least, if you can, trying to create like an additional stream of income. That can definitely be beneficial in an economy of uncertainty.
That's true. There's a lot of opportunities for people to work from home and work on their own time, as like a at-home call center. There's tons of things you can do if you have the internet and a device. So we thank you again for joining us for another episode of Mazars COVID Talks on pandemic lessons learned, Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, guys. Enjoy your weekend.
Yes, have a great weekend. For more information on the topics discussed today, visit us at mazarsusa.com/COVID-19. That's MAZARSUSA.com/COVID-19. Remember, all information shared on Mazars COVID Talks extends from reputable sources. The views expressed here are meant to serve as suggestive guidance based on the knowledge and expertise of the co-hosts and guests. Thank you for joining us.